The cowboy gave his only horse to an Apache woman. The next day, the chief brought 50 purebreds. The sun hung low in the dusty sky, casting long shadows across the small frontier town. The air smelled of dry earth, smoke from nearby chimneys, and the faint scent of animals from the stables. In this town lived a cowboy named Jack, a man who had known hardship all his life. His hands were rough from years of working cattle and riding across endless plains. He had seen storms sweep across the open land, harsh winters that left the earth frozen and unkind, and dry summers that made water a precious gift. But through all of this, Jack had one companion who had never left his side, his horse, Thunder. Thunder was no ordinary horse. He was strong, loyal, and smart, with a chestnut coat that shone like polished wood under the sunlight. Jack had raised Thunder from a foal, feeding him by hand, training him patiently through every mistake and misstep. They shared a bond that could not be described in words, a trust formed over countless miles of hard work and quiet nights under the stars. Thunder had saved Jack more than once, running through storms, jumping over sudden ravines, and even alerting him to dangers hidden in the tall grass. For Jack, Thunder was family. Losing him would feel like losing a part of himself. One afternoon, as Jack rode along a winding trail that led to the outskirts of town, he noticed something unusual. Near the dry riverbed, a woman struggled to lift herself onto a fallen log. Her clothes were torn and dusty, and her hair, dark as night, fell in disarray over her shoulders. At first, Jack thought she might be a traveler who had simply lost her way. But as he got closer, he saw the faint traces of blood on her arm and a deep bruise forming on her cheek. Something about her made him stop in his tracks. She was in trouble and she was alone. Jack guided Thunder carefully toward her. The horse's hooves crunched on the dry earth and the woman's head turned slowly. Her eyes, wide and wary, held a mixture of fear and hope. Jack raised a hand, showing that he meant no harm. "Are you hurt bad?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. "Can you ride?" The woman shook her head, wincing as she moved. I need help," she said softly, her voice trembling from pain or exhaustion. Jack could not tell which. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out and she sank back onto the log. Jack dismounted, moving carefully so as not to startle her. He knelt beside her, examining her injuries as best he could. There was no doctor nearby, and he carried only basic supplies, a small leather bag with bandages, some dried meat, and a bottle of clean water. He tore a strip from an old cloth and gently wrapped her bleeding arm. "I'm Jack," he said, trying to keep her calm. "You're safe here." "Don't worry, I'll get you fixed up as best as I can." She hesitated, then whispered her name, "Ahioka." There was a quiet dignity in her voice despite the obvious pain. Jack noticed that she did not look like the settlers of the town. Her skin was bronzed from the sun, and her clothes were made from soft, natural materials. There was a strength in her posture, even as she leaned on the log for support. Jack realized she was an Apache woman, far from her people and vulnerable in a place that could be dangerous for her kind. Jack helped Ahioka climb onto Thunder. She flinched slightly at the touch of the saddle, clearly unused to riding. He adjusted the reins and guided Thunder slowly, walking beside them until they reached a safe clearing. He gave her water and a little dried meat to eat, and she accepted it with a quiet nod. "I was trying to reach my people," she said after a while, her voice barely audible. "There was trouble. We were attacked. I got separated." Jack could see the fear in her eyes, the pain of being alone in a world that seemed too harsh. He thought about his own life, how he had learned to survive on his own, but how much easier it had been with Thunder by his side. And yet, looking at Ahioka, he knew what he had to do. "Thunder," he said softly, scratching the horse's neck. "I think he needs to help someone today, someone who really needs him." He looked at Ahioka. "You can take him, ride as far as you need. I'll be fine." Ahioka's eyes widened in shock. "Your horse," she whispered. "But he's your only one." Jack smiled faintly, though his heart ached. "I know, but you need him more than I do right now. You have to survive. That's more important than anything else." There was a long silence. Ahioka could barely believe what she was hearing. Jack was giving her the one thing he loved most, without asking for anything in return. She wanted to protest, to refuse, but she knew deep down that he was right. She needed Thunder to escape the dangers around her and find her people. With trembling hands, she climbed fully onto the horse. Jack adjusted the saddle one last time and whispered, "Take care of him. He's more than a horse, he's my friend." Ahioka nodded, tears forming in her eyes. I will, she promised. And with that, she urged Thunder forward, moving carefully at first, then faster as the open plains stretched out before her. Jack watched her go, feeling a strange mix of pride, sadness, and hope. He had given away his dearest companion, yet he felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. He had done the right thing. As she disappeared over the horizon, Jack sat by the riverbed, staring at the spot where she had been. He thought about how life often tested a person's character, how it asked you to make choices that were hard but meaningful. He thought about Thunder, galloping freely with Ahioka, carrying her to safety. And though he would miss his horse terribly, he knew that some acts of kindness had a power far beyond personal loss. The town continued its usual rhythm, but for Jack, nothing felt quite the same. He walked back slowly, feeling the emptiness of Thunder's absence, yet also a strange sense of peace. In giving, he had found something he could not have bought or earned. He had found purpose. And somewhere out there on the plains, a brave woman named Ahioka rode with hope, carrying not just herself, but the spirit of trust and kindness that a stranger had given her without question. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Jack leaned against the fence of his small ranch. He looked toward the horizon where Ahioka had vanished, imagining her safe, moving swiftly with the wind in her hair. He whispered a silent prayer for her journey, hoping that the world would treat her kindly. And though he could not have known it at the time, the simple act of giving Thunder away was about to change his life in ways he could never imagine. That night, Jack slept under the stars alone, feeling the absence of his companion, yet knowing that sometimes the bravest and most rewarding choices were the ones that asked you to put someone else's life above your own. The plains were quiet, the fire crackled softly, and in the distance, a lone figure on a horse continued towards safety, carrying with her the bond of trust and humanity that had bridged two very different worlds. The morning sun rose over the town, spilling golden light across the streets and rooftops. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and a gentle wind carried the scent of dry grass and smoke from chimneys. For most people, it was a new day like any other, but for Jack, the cowboy, the day felt different. The world around him seemed quieter, as if it knew that something important had just happened. Jack walked slowly through the dusty paths of the town, his hands deep in his pockets, feeling the absence of Thunder more sharply than he could have imagined. The stable where Thunder used to wait was empty. The familiar smell of hay, the soft nicker of a horse, and the warmth of the animal's presence were all gone. Jack paused at the fence, leaning on it, staring out at the horizon where Ahioka had ridden away. The memory of her eyes, wide with fear and hope, stayed in his mind. He could still see her trembling hands on the reins, the careful way she guided Thunder over the uneven ground. He had given away his most loyal companion, yet he felt no regret, only a strange mix of longing and pride. As Jack wandered through town, he noticed the curious eyes of his neighbors. Some whispered quietly to each other as he passed, casting glances that were filled with surprise, disbelief, and even admiration. Jack knew they were talking about what he had done, giving away his only horse to a stranger, a woman from a people many of them still feared or mistrusted. Some thought it foolish, even reckless. They had expected Jack to guard Thunder jealously, to hold onto the horse that had been his companion for so many years. Yet Jack had acted without hesitation, following only the quiet voice in his heart that told him helping Ahioka was the right thing to do. He stopped at the small general store to pick up a few supplies. The storekeeper, an older man with a weathered face, looked at Jack with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "I heard what you did," he said softly, his voice low enough that only Jack could hear. "Giving your horse away just like that? You're a brave man, but are you sure it was wise?" Jack smiled faintly, brushing the dust from his coat. "I had no choice," he replied. "She needed him more than I did, that's all there is to it." The storekeeper shook his head slowly, muttering to himself as he went back to arranging jars and sacks of goods. Jack left the store, walking out into the sun, feeling the weight of people's judgment and admiration alike. He knew he had acted according to his principles, and that was enough. Still, the emptiness of the stable and the quiet of the ranch reminded him that his life had changed in ways he could not yet understand. Jack spent the rest of the morning doing small chores around his ranch. He repaired a broken fence post, mended a torn tarp, and stacked firewood neatly near the barn. Each task, while necessary, felt different without Thunder beside him. The work was harder, lonelier, and quieter. Jack kept glancing toward the horizon, imagining Ahioka riding freely across the plains, Thunder carrying her safely. He wondered how far she had gone, whether she was tired, or if she had found water and shelter. The thought of her well-being was both comforting and anxious. He hoped she knew how much he had trusted her, and that she would remember his kindness. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Jack rode out on foot to the riverbed where he had first met Ahioka. He wanted to see the spot where their lives had intersected, where a single act of generosity had set a chain of events into motion that neither of them could have predicted. He sat on a rock, letting the wind brush against his face, and remembered the exact moment he had offered Thunder. He could still see the fear in her eyes, the hesitation, and then the slow, careful acceptance of his gift. It had been a moment of pure human connection, unspoken and unplanned, yet profound in its meaning. Nearby, children played in the dirt, chasing one another with sticks and laughing. Their innocence reminded Jack of what it meant to be free and unburdened by fear or suspicion. He thought about Ahioka and her people, wondering if her journey would ever allow her to experience even a fraction of the same freedom. The thought made him smile faintly. Despite the hardships she had faced, she had survived, and she had Thunder to help her on her way. That survival, that resilience, was a testament to the human spirit, something Jack had always respected, even in himself. By evening, word of Jack's action had spread further through town. Merchants, travelers, and ranchers alike spoke of the cowboy who had given away his horse to a stranger. Some admired his bravery, others questioned his judgment, but all agreed that it was an unusual act. Jack noticed the change in people's behavior toward him. Strangers offered nods of respect, and a few of the local ranchers came by to check on him, curious to hear his story firsthand. He told them simply that it was the right thing to do, that he had acted without expecting anything in return. Most of them nodded, some skeptically, some with genuine appreciation. That night, Jack sat by a small campfire outside his cabin. The stars twinkled above, and the cool night air carried the distant sounds of the plains, the call of an owl, the rustle of a coyote, the whisper of the wind through the grass. He thought about Thunder and Ahioka, imagining them riding together across open land, free and unafraid. The fire flickered, casting shadows across his face, and Jack realized that sometimes the hardest choices in life were the ones that required giving up something you loved for the sake of someone else. He remembered the exact moment he had handed Thunder to her, the trust he had placed in her hands, and the quiet courage it must have taken for her to accept it. Jack understood then that generosity was not just about giving. It was about trusting, believing, and hoping that the world would honor the goodness in people. He had given without expecting, and though he felt the pang of loss, he also felt a strange sense of hope. As the fire burned low, Jack allowed himself a small smile. He thought about how small acts of kindness could ripple outward, affecting lives in ways no one could predict. His actions had changed the path of one woman, and perhaps in time they would change the path of many more. Jack knew that life on the frontier was harsh, unpredictable, and often unforgiving. Yet even in such a world, moments of true humanity could shine brightly, like stars in the night sky. He leaned back, closing his eyes, listening to the quiet hum of the night. The absence of Thunder was a heavy weight, yet it was balanced by a feeling of peace. He had done what he believed was right, and that, he knew, was worth more than anything else. Somewhere out there, Ahioka rode toward safety, carrying with her the trust and kindness of a man she had never known before. And in that thought, Jack found comfort, knowing that the world could still hold moments of unexpected goodness, even in the midst of hardship. Before he fell asleep, Jack whispered a quiet hope into the night, that Ahioka would find her people, that she would be safe, and that somehow the gift he had given would return to him in ways he could never imagine. He did not know that this hope would soon be answered in a way beyond anything he could have dreamed. But for now, all he could do was wait, trust, and reflect on the courage it had taken to give away something so precious. And in that quiet, starlit night, Jack knew that even the smallest act of bravery and generosity could set in motion a story far larger than himself. A story that would be remembered long after the plains had settled into silence once again. The next morning, the town awoke to a sense of quiet curiosity. Jack was going about his usual routine, though his steps were slower, his eyes often drifting toward the horizon where he had last seen Ahioka and Thunder. The memory of her riding away was still vivid, her hair blowing in the wind, the horse's hooves kicking up dust, and the determination in her eyes. He felt a strange mix of worry and hope. He knew she was strong and capable, but the plains could be unforgiving, and dangers lurked in every direction. As he finished repairing the fence near the riverbed, a sound carried over the wind that immediately caught his attention. At first it was faint, almost like the rhythm of distant thunder. But as the moments passed, it grew louder, more deliberate and unmistakable, the steady beat of many hooves hitting the dry earth. Jack's heart began to race. He squinted toward the horizon, shielding his eyes from the morning sun, and saw something that made him freeze in disbelief. From far across the plains, a group of riders appeared. They were moving swiftly, yet with a controlled grace that spoke of experience and discipline. Each rider sat tall in the saddle, their movements perfectly synchronized. Jack's eyes widened as he counted them. There were more than 10, more than 20, and then he realized the true number. A large group of Apache warriors, riding not ordinary horses but beautiful, strong, purebred animals that seemed almost too magnificent to be real. 50 horses, each shining in the sunlight, moving as one across the plains, with the riders atop them commanding respect with every gesture. Jack felt a mix of fear and amazement. It was rare for the Apache to enter town, and rarer still to see such a display of wealth, power, and unity. He instinctively reached for the corner of his coat, as if to steady himself, though he was unarmed and alone. His mind raced through possibilities. Were they here to punish him for something, or had word traveled faster than he realized? As the group drew closer, a figure separated from the rest. A tall man with a calm yet commanding presence rode forward. His clothing was decorated with intricate patterns and feathers, and his eyes held both intelligence and warmth. Jack recognized him immediately from the stories he had heard around town. This was the chief of the Apache tribe, Ahioka's father. The chief's gaze met Jack's, and in that moment Jack felt a mixture of respect, fear, and curiosity. The chief dismounted slowly, his movements deliberate and confident. Jack watched as the rest of the warriors formed a wide circle behind him, each horse stamping the earth lightly, their riders waiting silently. The chief approached, carrying a small, ornate wooden box in his hands. He stopped a few feet away from Jack, lowered the box, and nodded respectfully. His eyes conveyed gratitude without words. Jack stepped forward cautiously, unsure what to do. I don't understand," he said, his voice steady but curious. Why are you here?" The chief's voice was calm and measured. "Your kindness has reached us," he said. "You gave something of great value without asking for anything in return. You saved my daughter's life. We have come to honor you." Jack blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Honor me," he repeated. "I only did what anyone would have done." The chief shook his head gently. "Not everyone has the courage to give without expecting. Your heart is generous, and for that you deserve recognition." He handed the wooden box to Jack, who took it with trembling hands. Inside, Jack found small trinkets carved from wood and stone, beautifully detailed and clearly made with care. There was a note written in a mix of English and Apache symbols, expressing gratitude from the chief and his people. Jack felt a lump rise in his throat. The gesture alone was humbling, yet he sensed that something even greater was about to follow. The chief signaled to the warriors behind him. One by one they rode forward, forming two neat lines. And then Jack saw it, the herd of 50 purebred horses, each more magnificent than the last. Their coats gleamed in the sunlight, muscles rippling beneath the skin, eyes alert and intelligent. They moved with precision, yet with the freedom and spirit of the wild. Jack could hardly believe his eyes. He had given away his only horse, the companion of a lifetime, and here was a gift that was beyond his wildest dreams. The chief spoke again. "These horses are for you. They are a token of our thanks. You acted with honor, and we wish to honor you in return." Jack felt overwhelmed. His mind struggled to comprehend the scale of generosity before him. 50 horses, enough to change his life completely. But more than the horses, it was the lesson he felt pressing upon him. Acts of kindness could ripple far beyond what one might expect. The chief's people had honored Ahioka's safety by honoring him, a man who had done something brave and selfless without any thought of reward. Ahioka herself rode forward then, sitting atop Thunder, looking healthier and stronger than the day before. She smiled at Jack, her eyes shining with gratitude. She had returned to her father, but she had made sure that Jack would be recognized for his courage. Jack felt a deep warmth in his chest. Seeing her safe, seeing the chief and his warriors, he realized that this moment was about more than horses. It was about trust, respect, and the bonds that could form between people from different worlds. The townspeople who had gathered to watch the spectacle gasped in awe. Some clutched their hats to their chests, others whispered excitedly to each other. Jack noticed familiar faces, neighbors who had doubted his choice, now staring with admiration and amazement. He could see that their perspective was changing. Here was proof that kindness, courage, and integrity were not weaknesses, but strengths that could command respect from even the proudest warriors. The chief spoke again, addressing both Jack and the gathered townspeople. "We give these horses not only as a gift to one man, but as a lesson to all. Honor, generosity, and courage are values that cross all borders, all cultures, all lands. Remember this day." Jack stepped forward, humbled, unsure how to respond. Words felt inadequate. But he spoke anyway, his voice steady with emotion. I never expected any of this. I only did what I thought was right. Thank you for your generosity. I will honor it, and I will honor you as well." The chief nodded, a quiet smile on his face. The Apache warriors then formed a loose circle, allowing Jack to approach and inspect the horses. Each one was remarkable, stronger, faster, and more intelligent than any horse he had ever known. He ran his hands along their sleek coats, feeling the power and life beneath his fingertips. Thunder nickered softly, as if acknowledging Jack's presence, and Jack felt a mixture of joy and humility. His small act of kindness had grown into something far beyond his imagination. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Jack realized that the encounter was not just about horses or gifts. It was about understanding, respect, and the unexpected ways that good deeds could return to those who acted with courage and honor. The chief and his warriors prepared to leave, but not before ensuring that Jack knew how much his action had meant to them. Ahioka rode up once more, a bright smile on her face. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice carrying sincerity and warmth. Jack nodded, knowing that the words could not capture the depth of what had happened. As they departed, Jack watched the group ride away, 50 purebred horses glinting in the sunlight, each rider carrying with them the pride of their culture and the gratitude of a people who valued courage above all else. He felt a quiet awe in his heart. The plains seemed bigger, the sky brighter, and the world in that moment filled with possibilities. He knew that this story would be remembered in the town for years to come, a tale of trust, generosity, and the bonds that could form between strangers in a world often harsh and unforgiving. Jack returned to his cabin that evening, the weight of the day pressing gently on his shoulders. The memory of Thunder and Ahioka riding toward the horizon stayed in his mind, a reminder that bravery and kindness could create miracles in ways one could never predict. He knew that his life had changed forever, not just because of the horses, but because he had glimpsed the power of humanity at its best. That night, as Jack lay under the stars, he thought of the chief, the warriors, and Ahioka. He realized that the world, while full of challenges, was also full of people capable of extraordinary generosity and honor. And in that thought, he felt a sense of peace and hope that he had never known before. The story of the cowboy who gave his only horse was no longer just his story. It was now a story of courage, kindness, and the unexpected ways that good deeds could echo across the world. After the Apache warriors had left, Jack stood in the middle of his ranch, the sun dipping low in the sky and painting the land in shades of gold and orange. The herd of 50 purebred horses he had just received grazed nearby, their sleek coats glistening in the evening light. Jack ran his hand across the mane of one particularly striking horse, marveling at its strength and beauty. He could hardly believe that such a gift had come to him, a man who had only yesterday felt the emptiness of losing Thunder. The magnitude of the gesture began to sink in, and with it came a deep sense of humility. Jack thought about Ahioka, the brave woman who had inspired all of this. He remembered the fear in her eyes when he first saw her near the riverbed, how fragile and alone she had seemed, and yet how much determination she carried in her heart. The decision to give her Thunder had been difficult, but looking at the magnificent horses now, he realized that courage and kindness often came with rewards beyond measure. The chief had not only acknowledged his selfless act, but had honored it in a way that transcended any material value. It was a lesson Jack knew he would never forget. As he walked among the new horses, he began to notice small details. The intelligence in their eyes, the way they moved with purpose and grace, and the calm yet alert way they responded to his voice. It was as if they sensed the history of what had just occurred, the bond of trust and respect that connected Jack, Ahioka, and the Apache people. Each horse carried not just strength and beauty, but a story, a connection to people who valued honor, generosity, and courage above all else. Jack felt a growing realization that life could be filled with unexpected blessings, especially when one acted with a pure heart. That evening, Jack sat by the campfire, reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the small town around him, where people had whispered and wondered about his decision to give away thunder. Now those same people would see the results, proof that an act of kindness, even when seemingly risky or foolish, could ripple outward in ways no one could have imagined. Jack felt a sense of peace knowing that he had done what was right, and that the universe, or fate, or simply the human spirit, had responded in kind. He thought about the chief's words earlier in the day, about honor and generosity crossing borders and cultures. It struck him deeply because Jack had always believed in fairness and respect, yet he had never experienced such recognition for his actions. The chief's gift was not just horses. It was an affirmation of values that Jack had always held dear, and a powerful reminder that courage and selflessness were understood and appreciated, even by people from a world very different from his own. Over the next few days, Jack worked tirelessly to care for the new herd. He cleaned the stables, repaired fences, and fed the horses, learning their personalities and quirks. Some were gentle and calm, while others were spirited and strong-willed. Each horse demanded respect and attention, and Jack treated them all with care. As he worked, he thought about how much his life had changed in such a short time. The loneliness he had felt after giving away thunder was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and responsibility. The horses were more than animals. They were symbols of trust, of human connection, and of the extraordinary way life could reward courage and generosity. Jack also reflected on the bond between himself and Ahioka. Although they had only met briefly, and although she had returned to her people, their lives were now connected forever. He realized that sometimes the most meaningful connections were formed not through long friendships or family ties, but through acts of kindness and understanding. The moment he had chosen to help her, to give her what she needed without expecting anything in return, had created a chain of events that brought him this incredible gift and a new understanding of humanity. The townspeople began to visit Jack's ranch more frequently. They came to see the horses, to hear the story of the cowboy and the Apache woman, and to witness firsthand the generosity of the chief and his people. Many were inspired by the tale, realizing that courage and kindness were qualities that could bridge divides, heal fears, and foster respect across cultures. Jack became a quiet leader in the town, not because he sought power or recognition, but because people naturally respected his character and the choices he had made. One afternoon, Jack rode out on horseback to check the fences along the edge of his land. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth, and the sound of hooves echoed across the plains. He felt a sense of freedom and fulfillment unlike anything he had experienced before. The gift of the horses had opened up new possibilities for his life. He could expand his ranch, help struggling neighbors, and build a legacy that would be remembered for years. Yet more than that, he knew that the true value of the gift was not in wealth or opportunity. It was in the recognition of what it meant to act with integrity and kindness. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, Jack sat atop a hill overlooking his land. The herd grazed peacefully below, their silhouettes outlined against the fading light. He thought about how life often presented choices that tested one's character, and how the simplest acts of courage could have the most profound impact. The memory of Ahioka, brave and resilient, stayed with him. Her safety had been his responsibility for a brief but meaningful moment, and in honoring that responsibility, he had gained far more than he could have imagined. That night, Jack lit a fire outside his cabin and gazed at the stars. The plains were quiet, and for the first time in a long time he felt completely at peace. He understood now that generosity was a two-way street, not in a transactional sense, but in the way it created trust, respect, and lasting bonds between people. By helping Ahioka, he had connected with her people, with the chief, and with the values that transcended fear and prejudice. The gift of the 50 purebred horses was more than material. It was a reflection of human dignity, honor, and the extraordinary power of kindness. Jack thought about the lessons he had learned. Life was unpredictable and often harsh, but courage and generosity could create ripples far beyond what one could see. A single act, performed without expectation or hesitation, could change the course of many lives. He realized that he had been given a rare opportunity to witness the beauty of human connection and the rewards of living with integrity. This understanding filled him with a sense of purpose, a renewed commitment to live with honor, and a desire to share what he had learned with others. As the night deepened, Jack reflected on how the gift of the horses had transformed not just his circumstances, but his perspective. He felt a profound gratitude toward Ahioka, her father, and the Apache people, understanding that their gesture had taught him something far greater than he could have imagined. He realized that life's greatest rewards often came not from wealth or power, but from the courage to act selflessly, the wisdom to understand others, and the willingness to embrace the unknown with an open heart. By the time Jack went to bed that night, the stars were bright in the sky, and the herd of horses slept quietly nearby. He closed his eyes with a sense of peace, knowing that his life had been forever changed by a simple choice, a single act of kindness, and the extraordinary generosity of a people who valued honor above all else. And in that moment, he understood something profound. The world was full of possibilities, and when one acted with courage and a pure heart, the universe often responded in ways that were far greater than one could ever imagine. The morning air was crisp and clear as Jack rose, early, feeling a quiet excitement in his chest. For days, he had walked among the 50 new horses, learning their habits, caring for them, and marveling at their beauty and strength. Each horse had a personality of its own, some gentle and calm, others spirited and bold. But together they created a living testament to the incredible generosity of Ahioka's father and the Apache tribe. Jack had come to realize that this gift was more than just animals. It was an opportunity, a responsibility, and a reminder of what it meant to live with courage and honor. He saddled one of the most trusting horses, a sleek brown stallion with intelligent eyes, and rode across the open plains surrounding his ranch. The wind whipped against his face, carrying with it the familiar sense of grass, earth, and freedom. As he rode, Jack thought about how much his life had changed in such a short time. Only a few days ago, he had felt the ache of loss, having parted with Thunder to help Ahioka. That selfless choice had led to a reward far beyond his imagination. He now understood something he had always suspected but never fully experienced. Life had a way of balancing acts of kindness with unexpected blessings. Back at the ranch, neighbors began arriving, curious about the incredible herd and the story behind it. Some had doubted Jack when he gave away Thunder, calling it foolish or reckless. Now they looked at him with a mixture of awe and respect. Children ran around the horses, laughing as they watched the animals move gracefully, while adults marveled at the sheer number and quality of the animals. Jack welcomed them warmly, sharing the story of Ahioka, the Apache woman who had inspired his choice, and the chief who had honored it. People listened intently, captivated by the tale of courage, kindness, and unexpected generosity. Jack realized that the gift of the horses was not just for him. It was a lesson for the entire community. He began to help struggling neighbors by offering them horses for their work, showing them how to care for the animals, and teaching the values of trust and respect he had learned from the Apache people. The town began to thrive as neighbors worked together, inspired by Jack's example. They saw that helping others could create a cycle of generosity and growth, a chain reaction that brought communities closer and made life better for everyone. One afternoon, Jack rode out to the edge of the plains to see the sun setting over the distant hills. The sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflecting off the shiny coats of the horses grazing nearby. Jack's heart was full. He thought about Ahioka, wondering how she had fared after returning to her people. He imagined her sharing the story of their brief encounter, telling her father about Jack's courage and kindness. He smiled, realizing that a single act could ripple far beyond the immediate moment, touching lives in ways he could never have predicted. As he rode slowly back toward the ranch, Jack reflected on the lessons he had learned. Life was unpredictable, filled with hardships, challenges, and moments of doubt. Yet it was in these moments that true character was revealed. Acts of kindness, courage, and selflessness were not measured by what one received in return, but by the impact they had on others. Jack had given thunder without expectation, and in return, he had received a gift far greater than he could have imagined. A herd of purebred horses, the respect of the Apache people, and a renewed understanding of what it meant to live with honor. The story of the cowboy who gave away his only horse spread beyond the town. Travelers and merchants carried the tale to other towns, telling of Jack's courage and the extraordinary generosity of the Apache chief. Jack became known not just as a skilled rancher and horseman, but as a man of integrity and honor. People admired him for his actions, but Jack himself remained humble. He never sought praise or recognition. He had acted according to his heart, and that alone was enough. Over time, Jack used the herd to build a thriving ranch, helping neighbors and friends along the way. He trained the horses carefully, teaching them to work with both skill and respect. He helped other ranchers improve their livestock and shared knowledge he had learned from the Apache people about handling and caring for animals. The town prospered, not just because of the wealth the horses represented, but because of the spirit of generosity and courage that Jack had brought into the community. Jack often thought back to the moment he first met Ahioka. He remembered her fear, her bravery, and the trust she had shown in accepting thunder. That single encounter had changed both of their lives. Ahioka had survived because of Jack's selflessness, and Jack had been transformed by the recognition and generosity of her people. He realized that life's most meaningful moments often came from small acts, performed with honesty and courage, and that those moments could grow into something far greater than anyone could predict. One evening, as Jack sat by a campfire under a sky full of stars, he reflected on the path that had brought him here. The wind carried the sounds of horses moving in the distance, their hooves soft on the grass. Jack felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for the horses alone, but for the lessons they represented. He had learned that kindness could create bonds across cultures, that courage could inspire respect, and that a single act of generosity could change the course of many lives. Jack knew that his story would live on, shared in the town and beyond as a reminder of the power of human goodness. People would remember the cowboy who gave away his only horse, and they would remember how the Apache chief responded with a gift of 50 purebreds. But more importantly, they would remember the lesson at the heart of it. That courage, kindness, and integrity were qualities that could transform the world. The ranch thrived, the town grew closer, and Jack continued to live a life guided by the principles that had brought him to this point. He helped neighbors, cared for the herd, and remained connected to the lessons of trust and generosity he had learned from Ahioka and her people. Each day, he rode across the plains, feeling the wind on his face and the freedom of the open land, grateful for the extraordinary chain of events that had begun with a simple act of kindness. In the years that followed, Jack became a symbol of honor in the region. Travelers came to hear his story, and young cowboys and ranchers learned from his example. The gift of the horses had created not just wealth or comfort, but a lasting legacy of courage and generosity. Jack knew that the true reward was not the material gift, but the understanding of the deep connections between people, the power of selfless action, and the importance of living with integrity. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Jack would look toward the horizon, imagining Ahioka riding free with thunder among her people. He would smile, thinking of the chain of trust and gratitude that had begun with a simple act and grown into something extraordinary. And he would feel a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had lived in a way that honored the values of courage, generosity, and respect for others. In the end, Jack realized that life was a story of choices, some small, some large, but all meaningful. By giving his only horse to Ahioka, he had set in motion a series of events that transformed his life, the lives of those around him, and even the relationships between two very different cultures. The herd of 50 purebred horses was more than a gift. It was a reminder that acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching hearts and inspiring others to live with courage and honor. Jack's story became a legend, not because of the horses or the wealth they represented, but because it was a story of humanity at its best. People remembered it for generations, sharing it as a tale of hope, generosity, and the extraordinary power of one person to make a difference. And through it all, Jack continued to ride, care for his horses, and live a life guided by the principles that had shaped him. A life of courage, kindness, and integrity that inspired everyone who heard his story. The plains remained vast and beautiful, the sun rising and setting in the same timeless rhythm, but for Jack, each day carried new meaning. He had learned that life could surprise you in ways you never expected, that one act of selflessness could lead to rewards beyond imagination, and that the heart's courage was the greatest wealth anyone could possess. And in that knowledge, Jack found peace, purpose, and a legacy that would endure long after his time on the land had passed.